So there's no separation between our higher self and the ego?
Exactly, exactly. There's nothing that's outside of this single aliveness. When you sense that here-ness, that awareness, it doesn't have an edge. Like you check and see, well, does it end right at my skin? And it doesn't.
What purpose does suffering serve?
I was creating my suffering by pretending I was one thing when it turned out that's not what I am. We can't miss our purpose. We are living out the experiences that life is calling us into.
Lisamcarrillo, you wrote a book called An Unprincipled Life, Living from the Unknown. What does it mean to live from the unknown?
So there's this inner movement, and when we're following it, we feel free. Anytime that we're not following it is when we're feeling like we're stuck, like we have to do something that is actually compromising that inner movement. And that inner movement doesn't follow any rules. It's the most alive, the most creative, the most connecting, the most vibrant part of us. And living from the unknown is consciously letting that take us forward and not trying to comply with meeting any expectations we have of ourselves or others have of us.
Okay, so would you say that it's energy because it's moving?
Yes, yes. It's definitely not a person. It's not a principle. It's it's not really a thing. It's a movement. Exactly. And this movement, we wouldn't be alive without it. It's not like some people have it and some people don't. Everybody has it. And in the end, it's the thing that makes everything happen. But if we want to resist it, then it incorporates that into the movement because it's allowing us the experience of trying to control and finding our life fall apart and going forward. And all of that is part of its perfect design. It is intelligent, not with a personality, but it's an intelligence that doesn't have to plan ahead. Like it's innate creativity and love. Every moment spontaneously arrives. And so it doesn't have to know beforehand. It's that intelligent. It can just pick the next most perfect thing all the time.
Would you say that we're better off not trying to control and letting this inner energy that we have be our guidance?
My experience is that I feel so much more free living this way, so much more connected living this way. Does that mean my circumstances have always been better? In the moment, I might have arguments with my circumstances, but then with 2020, it's turned out they were always the best. So, if we want this secure, comfortable life that fits in our boxes, then we might not be happy all the time with this way. But it's so full, it's so rich. You know, so I was living in New York City and we were done. We felt like my boyfriend at the time, now he's my husband, we were done. And where did we want to live next? And I scoured the country, figuring out, we love to hike, where are going to be the best places to live. And I could feel a lot of turmoil in the air. So I wanted to be somewhere where there wouldn't be as much turmoil. And I first picked a place where I thought, well, that's kind of a balance of both of these things. And then this life arose in me and said, wait a minute. You are about enjoying life. You are not about playing it safe. So back to the board. And then it was obvious we were going to move to the Redwoods in California and live along the ocean. That was going to be the most rich life. It wasn't about playing safe. And oh my gosh, it's just been wonderful. We're so great. I did have a moment where I had to leave my job, work far away for a while, come back to my job, things that if I hadn't been in California might not have happened. but each time it turned out really good. Like moving away, we found these great places to hike that I wouldn't have known about. And then coming back, I mean, it couldn't have been better.
Now, how did you know redwoods? How did that come to you?
Well, I'm originally from California, but ever since I was a little girl, whenever I saw pictures of the redwoods, they've just always called to me. It definitely feels like a place that is deep in my soul. There's a strong resonance and belonging for me there.
Okay, so that's what really pulled you, and you knew, even though you're going to have challenges.
Yes, exactly.
My next question for you, it might be the same, if not a similar answer to the first one about the energy we were talking about inside of each of us, that movement. But I want to hear your definition of this. So, what is the true self?
Yes. Oh, this is a great, great question. So in 2009, so I'm going to kind of give my experience and then answer the question.
Please.
In 2009, I was at a meditation retreat, hoping to be enlightened, and and then I realized I wasn't really at the retreat because I was constantly evaluating if I was getting what I wanted, and that evaluation mechanism was pulling me out of the present moment. So I relaxed and let go and said, okay, forget whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I'm just going to be here. Who cares? I don't want anything. I just want to be here. And the next morning, I woke up and there were no thoughts creating an independent Lisa. I saw how much work it was to constantly create a sense of an independent Lisa. It is a lot of effort. So for the next few weeks, I didn't have that. All I had was this aliveness that is moving us all the time without any extra layer on top, trying to take ownership, trying to evaluate, trying to direct. It was gone. And and I saw how that was really the thing moving me all along. It wasn't like now a new thing was moving me. It was always moving me. It was just I was adding this extra costume on top that I didn't have to. And I see how we all do that. Like there's this, we all know it's inevitable. Deep inside of us, we know I'm going to be leaving this job or I'm going to be having this new relationship or we all know. But we're trying to fit it into the schema of what we think we need to be. I need to be responsible, supposedly, or I need to be loyal, supposedly, or I need to have an exciting life, supposedly, or whatever we think. And so if the direction doesn't seem to be fitting that, then we're trying to make our idea of ourselves and the direction match. And that is our ego. That is this presentation that we think we've got to have. And, it can sound like a good thing, I have to be kind. But, I remember a time there was a friend who needed to drive a couple hours away to a hospital. And I had helped her in other ways, but this I just didn't feel any interest in doing. And she really had some pretty serious health things going on. And I couldn't offer her the ride. And so I didn't. I felt this movement of life saying no. Well, later I found out that her son, that she was estranged from, wanted to drive her.
Oh.
So we are perfect puzzle pieces. And if that inner guidance doesn't fit our idea of being kind, it's for a reason. There's no standard. There's only the inner movement of life. And that's our true self. And it's inevitable. We can't mess it up. It's inevitable, but we can certainly make it difficult on ourselves.
Mhm. I want to go back to the ego since you mentioned it for a moment, but I have a little story myself that you just reminded me of. I was meditating with someone who I was dating, this was years ago, and afterwards, we're sitting there and I was just awareness. I completely, that's all I was. There was nothing else. And I voiced that, like I would just kind of like looked around and I said, like I'm awareness. And he kind of panicked a little bit and he's like, no. And he's like, I come back, like I like your ego. And I thought that was so funny, and it just made me laugh and laugh. But I want to hear your perspective on the ego, because I hear it, demonized, criticized, um, and I did that myself at different points. But I feel like you get to this phase where you realize that's kind of what makes you human. Or how do you see it?
Right. Well, there's different things that get called the ego. Um, so the inevitable movement that we are, what is actually making everything happen, that is the true self. So ego can't actually make something happen. It can throw resistance in, and then this aliveness incorporates that in its design. So anytime that we're in agreement with what's happening, we're probably touching into the true self. Anytime that we are in resistance to what's happening, then that's a whole set of thought structures. That's it. It doesn't have any aliveness to it. It's just a bunch of thought structures. And those thought structures have a lot of preferences. The inner aliveness wanted to have the experience of the ego. It doesn't allow it's all of life comes from this one thing. There's not this other thing coming in, but it's a stage that seems to be fizzling out for a lot of people, where this extra thinking and resisting and analyzing and evaluating, trying to fit in this mental direction, conceptual direction, is fizzling out. So the ego just is there for its time period. It's just a pattern of thoughts, and then it fizzles out. And then after that, we do have, as a way of interacting with people who, still see everything from a very individualistic standpoint. Yeah, so we'll talk as though we have an ego. We'll talk as though there's some need here, but we know it's just a tool we're using. It's not an actual reality. So you could say that that's using the ego, but that's no longer using this identity. That's just a tool of how we interact.
Okay, so when you say it's all one, so there's no separation between our higher self and the ego?
Exactly. There's nothing that's outside of this single aliveness. It is it. And it's doing this dance where it's transferring energy out of these mental identities and pulling the energy back into the core in a way that more and more people can operate clearly from this.
Okay, so then I would like to know, how do we connect to our true self?
Yeah, right. So first of all, we're never disconnected from it. We're never in a wrong place. We've never made a mistake. We're innocent. We're totally innocent. And that which is most alive is inevitably here. It's not going to get harmed. So we can relax, right? And when we're allowing all that efforting to relax, and we're just feeling this aliveness that says, I'm here. The least amount of anything, any effort, the least amount, the most natural, even more natural than the heartbeat and the breath, like the least amount of effort, you can feel just pure life arising in our body, just pure life. And there's not even a boundary when we sense into it, and anybody can do this right now. When you sense that here-ness, that awareness, it doesn't have an edge. Like, you check and see, well, does it end right at my skin? And it doesn't. It doesn't have an edge. It doesn't have a boundary, and it's it doesn't require our head. Like you can feel it in the heart, you can feel it in the gut. And when we just relax and rest any need to be anything, to do anything, to prepare for anything, just relax and rest. And it's kind of scary to think, what if that's all I moved from? But that's been my ongoing experiment now for many, many years. And I can say it's a worthwhile experiment. Just moving from this, not from any need. And it's a very fulfilling experience. Even when circumstances look all mucky or our emotional system is out of balance and I'm feeling whatever, deeper than that, I know is this awareness. And I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the whole container. So all of those are just the clouds in the sky. This is the sky, and this is what we are.
Beautifully said. And as you speak about it, it's so easy to tap into it and to drop into it. And I have a mantra that's be here now that I'll use, to pull me back. But for the listeners and also for myself, because I'm not always able to do that, how do you maintain that space? How do you center back there?
For me, it's a very tangible knowing, experiencing, sensing. So, I just feel this cloud of aliveness. And so all I do is just tune into this sense of aliveness. And I can ask, what am I? Not like thinking, what am I, but just feeling, what is this thing here? And feel, what is this? And as I sense it, I can feel how dynamic it is. In fact, there's a great meditation group, and I host them 3 times a week. Anybody is welcome. They can email me if they want to join. And we just go around in a circle for a whole hour, and we feel this awareness that we are. And in order to help it illuminate it more or intensify its sensing, we just say one word that we're noticing about it. So that really helps our focus zoom in there. And we just go around for a whole hour, each taking a turn, saying a word that shows us or that we're experiencing of it in that moment. And it's wonderful. Sometimes it's so vast and spacious, and sometimes it's so gentle. Sometimes it's so potent and real. It's all these things all the time, but we'll notice these different aspects.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I will definitely have that in the show notes in case anyone wants to partake. And
Great.
yeah, I am going to take a little bit of a left turn here because I've heard you talk about suffering, and I want to touch on that. What purpose does suffering serve?
It shows us what we're not. That is the main thing. Anytime we're suffering. Now, okay, physical pain, that's something different. But this anguish that we create in our mind that is arguing with the flow of reality, it's just showing us, oh, I'm not that. So, I was married before. I thought that marriage was supposed to last forever. And as we were growing apart and it was causing these various schisms, I thought it was the schisms that were causing the problem. But we were all,
Schism?
yeah, that's disagreement, conflict. I thought that it was our differences in our conflicts that were the problem, and we needed to work them out. But now I can see we were just growing apart. And that is why we were having those conflicts. Now, I did learn a lot through them. I'm so, so grateful for all of them. But so the mental idea of myself is I'm somebody who commits to a relationship and it lasts. And my suffering was showing me I'm not. I'm somebody who commits to awareness and flows in and out of relationships as they express this aliveness. So
Wow.
I was creating my suffering by pretending I was one thing when it turned out that's not what I am. So like if I had been attached to going to work at the same place, and when I had to switch jobs, I would have been in agony about this, because in my head, I'm somebody who works at this place.
Right.
That didn't work out anymore. Um, but ironically, now I work part-time there again. That no, life was moving me somewhere else. And so as long as I wasn't attached to that identity, then it was just an easy transition. Oh, okay, I don't work there anymore. Now I work somewhere else.
That's it, attached to the identity. It's the attachments, right? It's to our identity. As long as we let go of those attachments, it makes life so much easier.
Right. Even it can be with the child, we think I'm a parent who the child will recognize as caring for them. But the child is attacking and disobeying and doing everything else. Okay, I'm not a parent whose child recognizes that I care for them. I'm not. I'm a parent whose child is very upset with them. Once we are able to have all the identities of life, suffering actually disappears.
Now, do you believe in soul contracts?
Yes, so this experience as a separate identity doesn't start as a body, it starts as a soul level. And so it also is just sort of a construct. It eventually kind of dissolves, but this soul experience, yeah, we want to experience all kinds of things. In fact, I had this vision of the one picking off different uh, aspects of itself, different qualities, and making a little recipe, and then tossing it as a soul and saying, I wonder what this one will do. So
Oh,
each soul has its own exploration that it wants to have. And the one is as itself curious. So we can't mess up. We are the recipe having its perfect set of experiences, its perfect adventures. And part of it is, oh, I'd like to develop the bright wisdom of this soul, which requires having these difficult experiences. Let me go and find somebody who will partner with me to make me have all these challenges. So I'll have the wisdom that I would like to have.
gosh, if only, I'm just thinking of when relationships end or when people, pass on. If only we could hang on to this knowing during those times, because I mean, that's the hardest part of the suffering. But as you were saying, that's to remind us that that's not who we are.
Right, right, exactly. My best friend died, and for me, the other side has always been real since I was a little girl. It seems more real than this.
Mhm.
So, in fact, I was looking at a picture. It had Jesus with the children, and immediately I thought, well, that's not quite what it looks like, but I know what they're trying to depict. So when he died, he thought he was an atheist. He thought it was gonna be the end. And I knew I was gonna have contact with him. So I was just so excited because I was like, okay, now we're gonna really have real contact.
Oh, and you were a kid?
When I saw that picture, I was a kid. When my best friend died, I was in my 40s.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Are you still in contact now?
Yes, yes. It's a little less frequent, but anytime that I want to check in, he's there. It's really, really nice. Yeah.
Lisa, do you have regrets?
No. And there was a time when I actually methodically went through my whole life. Because if there's even one regret, then that means I have to live with a filter because I think some bad thing could happen because it happened before. And so I can't be spontaneous. I have to quick check Well, if this action is going to lead to that bad thing again, then I have to filter it out. And how can you live spontaneously from aliveness if there's any filter?
Mm.
So I went through the whole list and really checked to see, is there anything I wish had not happened in my life? Either had not happened to me or something that I hadn't done. And I have to admit, good has ultimately come out of every single thing.
So when you make decisions, is there ever a tough decision for you to make? Or do you know, sorry, do you know that whatever you decide is going to lead you to the outcome that you want?
I feel the inner aliveness. And and I wait, if I don't know, then I don't know. I can't make myself know sooner than I know. The inner aliveness is going to erupt as the decision. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. I can get more information. So I can check and see, okay, well, I still don't know. Let's see if I need more information. And so I may do that. But then I just wait for the inner aliveness to arise as the decision, and then I do it. And if the decision doesn't make any sense, then, I'll really listen, till I feel like the whole being saying yes. But that's very rare. Usually it's just so obvious, especially surprisingly with the big decisions. Like we just bought an energy enhancement system, which is a very big purchase, over $100,000. And it's something we're offering for people to come and sit in. It's a wonderful experience, both for consciousness and for the physical body. And when I saw it for the first time, something in me said, we're going to offer that to the world. It was just like irresistible. So then I knew, and as different challenges came along the way, I could have had doubts like, why am I doing this? But I never had the doubts because that first moment was so clear. Littler decisions, I'm trying to think what would be like a little decision. Yeah, it's just become clearer and clearer and clearer. So it's rarely difficult. Yeah.
Are there things that you do in the physical world to help you stay in alignment, whether it's things that you do or things that you avoid doing?
Yes. Yes. Our world has a lot of appetite triggers, you know, like, supposedly we have to look a certain way, our house has to look a certain way, or we have to have a certain amount of security or whatever, all that stuff. So I spend as little time with things that I would consider appetite triggers, just a lot more time in things where I just feel so grateful and vibrant. So I spend a lot of time outside. I take time for meditation, which for me is that resting as awareness or doing that group experience. I have some things I've memorized so I can just go through them in my head. Like one is to seek the mind, but the discriminating mind is the greatest of mistakes. The discriminating mind doesn't know this aliveness. So spending time in the discriminating mind thinking it's going to help me know this aliveness better is like, why?
Yeah.
So yes, it's like it's this constant doing less and sensing more.
You can't think your way to enlightenment.
Exactly, exactly.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, can people have their own truth or their version of truth that is unique to them, or is there only one truth?
Truth is not a concept. You can't put truth in words. Truth is not an ideology or a philosophy. So any of those things are just symbols pointing to something. The truth is what is. And what is this erupting. Now, what is may look different from different views because, obviously an elephant from one direction or one location looks a different size or different shape than from a different. So the experience of what is will be different depending upon a person's point of perspective. But what is, you know, is the aliveness arising in the moment. And so there's one truth, but it's not going to be able to be described the same by every different person.
So it will sound different depending on where it's coming from.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm sure you've noticed that too.
Yes, it's funny because I did a video last year with a couple friends on, I don't even remember the topic, but I said something about it being my truth. And there were people that didn't like that in the comments. And then since then, it kind of, now I see it, I notice it when other people talk about my truth or the truth, and people seem to have an opinion of which is right.
Right. Well, that would be the discriminating mind, right? That is like, well, let's put in a box what is one truth, what is my truth, and it's just too dynamic to fit in any box. The moment we're trying to make a box, we have left it, right? I mean, we're trying to make ourselves comfortable in an ideology. So the more mystery, the more we're probably tapped into this aliveness, and the more structured, probably a little less feeling the full aliveness. But even that, right? There's a principle. I wouldn't argue that principle.
Exactly. I heard you tell a story that I'm going to ask you to share here because it just gave me such an aha moment and I could relate to it so much. You had an IUD, and we can kind of explain what that is. Although I feel like most of my listeners will know IUD. But yeah, if you want to share about that, I know that you were it inflicted pain on you, but that overall you saw this as a positive experience.
Yes, that was really amazing. So, an IUD is a contraceptive thing that goes inside the uterus and, prevents you from being able to get pregnant theoretically. So I went to get it, and when I walked into the office and saw the doctor, it was like I lost my breath. I couldn't speak. I had never met him before, but there was some powerful connection that happened. I didn't actually say anything about that. Then I just kind of collected myself and acted like normal. He placed it, and it was excruciatingly painful. I just went into these intense contractions. I had to rush to the bathroom. I couldn't walk for an hour. And then finally, it was okay enough to be able to walk. But I continued having contractions that were very strong for the first month, but gradually diminished over the course of 6 months it took before they were gone. So there was quite a lot of pain over this whole thing. Then I had it for several years, and it was time to have it taken out. And the normal way of pulling it out, it had moved in such a way that that wasn't available. So I had to have another procedure where they went into the uterus to pull it out. So I had to soften my cervix and open it up to get it out. And that was also, again, the drugs they gave me to soften the cervix were very intense on me, and I couldn't walk again. I was just lying on the floor in the hospital. It was very difficult. And then it was over. And this event, when I saw that doctor, it was like something had happened between us in the past. And whatever it was, I feel like it resolved through this IUD experience. And what was great about that is there was no blame. Like I never was like, oh, that doctor, he gave me that IUD or whatever, there was no blame. But at the same time, he did do something that the consequence was a lot of pain in my body for a long time. And my guess is that we resolved something through that experience. And what was, like I said, there was no blaming. So it was like the end of that cycle. There was no animosity, retribution, nothing. It was just completing that cycle completely. And I wonder, how many experiences that it looks like, a surgery went wrong or something like that, or just even a surgery. I mean, you can feel really bad after a surgery that went great. But is that actually more than that? Were there two souls where one was now getting to complete something with the other?
Yes, yes. When I heard you share that before, it left me thinking of every single thing I've gone through in my life. Like what was that resolving possibly? What was that me getting some type of karma from another life, or this relationship or whatever happened? And that story stuck out to me though, because I had pretty much the same experience. Maybe the most painful thing I've ever been through in my life, to the point where they had all the fans surrounding me because I've never sweat so much just laying down from the pain. And yeah, it was just, I had to think about that doctor. Like did I also have some sort of past with this soul that needed to be worked out?
Right.
Incredible.
It is. We never know the full echoes of what we're experiencing. There's this energetic fabric that we are a part of. I mean, everything is perfectly integrated and balanced in every moment. There's just not a single mistake. It takes
Mhm.
a lot of effort to imagine a mistake, actually.
Mhm. Yes, even every single person that's hearing these words right now, like there's no coincidence. There's something that they're supposed to take from this, to pick up from, to, grow or learn from, some type of lesson. And yeah, I try to walk through every day, remembering that because obviously life happens.
Right. Yeah,
Do you have any
exactly.
other examples that might be helpful?
Yes, I'm an ultrasound tech part-time, so I do medical ultrasounds on people. And one time I got this patient, and I don't know why the doctor had told him he had a really bad situation going on in his feet, and there's poor circulation contributing to that, and um, it was in very bad shape. When he came in, it was so stinky because of what was going on there. And um, I wondered, why didn't he come in earlier? I mean, it was just, and so for me to touch his legs to do the exam was extremely painful to him. And he was calling out, crying, yelling, and I didn't want to do it, but it was going to help him get them to decide what's the next treatment for him. So I'm smelling this, I'm hearing him. I don't want to cause him pain, but I have to do this exam. And the whole, however many minutes it was, 30 minutes or whatever, it was so unpleasant, so unpleasant. And at first, my head wanted to go into, why didn't he come in sooner when it wouldn't have been such an awful experience for him and me? But, from what he understood the doctor to say, he had done what he was supposed to do at home. And uh, and then it was like, okay, there is a reason he and I are interacting in this way. It was a very intense interaction. And and it was like the awareness just stepped in and said, okay, we're going to just do what we've got to do each moment, not going to blame or try to figure it out. And there was just compassion for the whole situation, compassion for him. And, it took me asking him, because, at first there was the blame coming out. Why didn't he come in sooner? But I asked him, well, what had you wait this long? And as he explained his understanding of what the doctor said, I could understand. And it was in that moment, seeking more information can sometimes allow the compassion to release more easily. And then it was just compassion for him, compassion for me. And I really feel like awareness at this stage, in this current experience in life on earth, awareness loves having compassion. It's like always finding new ways, of new instances of, oh yeah, here's a way that I could experience compassion. Oh, here's another way. So whether it's compassion for myself or compassion for someone else, any moment that looks wrong is actually a new opportunity for compassion. And awareness is in love with having compassion. So it's like, oh, that's all this is. It's a new opportunity for compassion.
Lisa, what would you say a successful life looks like?
You know, we can't miss our purpose. We are living out the experiences that life is calling us into. And it will feel successful if we are in a curious, learning, heart open place. We will feel successful. We will discover the connection opportunities, the wisdom opportunities, the compassion opportunities, the creativity opportunities, the surrender opportunities. We will discover those. It's inevitable. But when we're more in alignment with them, we'll feel successful. And when we're deciding that, well, I thought my life was supposed to look like this other way, we won't feel successful. And, you know, it's inevitable, you know, even if for whatever reason, all the way to the point of death, you know, we think we should have been something else. And so our life feels like a total failure, and peace never came, and acceptance never came, and wisdom never came. You know, so that it looks like, okay, we never learned anything. No, it's not finished. On the other side, we get to experience those same experiences because now we've got them with wisdom added in. So that in that moment, our life is completed. And in that moment, it's become successful because the wisdom has gleaned and reaped all of that it needed to gather.
We must go through the challenges and the suffering in order to gain the wisdom.
Right. Yes. And it's not that the wisdom, um, you know, the awareness wanted to have the experience of getting wisdom.
Mm.
That's what we are. We're little vehicles of that. And it's all of that intelligence is already available, but it's a real cool experience to get to of wisdom. We could be in, you know, some other reality where we're more aware of awareness. We're already just flowing without any resistance. But when that happens, you actually don't get the same experience of wisdom. So I had a vision where I was in this place where um, that was the case. It was just like everybody did what was the perfect flow, but there was no particular understanding of it. So I was supposed to be to work at a certain time, and then I just totally forgot. Totally, it was not even in my mind. And then a few hours later, suddenly it was in my mind again. So then I went to work a few hours late, but nobody there was surprised. I hadn't been needed, no patients had come or whatever. And so they knew that I wasn't there for the perfect reason and I would be there at the perfect time. But there was no wisdom. There was just a perfect flow, but with no understanding about it.
Mhm.
So this kind of experience where we do have the thoughts, well, what if this, or how about that? Which, you know, some of those are inspired thoughts of something alive being created, but a lot of them come from, you know, this appetite stuff. And without those thoughts, though, we wouldn't have the experience of wisdom because wisdom weighs alternatives. So by having Earth like this, we get to have the experience of wisdom. And, you know, the whole idea that Earth is messed up and, you know, it shouldn't be like this, or we're going to fix it. Um, we're getting all the perfect experiences. And I did ask, I said, well, but what about some of the big drastic things that have happened? And I got shown a vision of two sticks being put together and life flowing into them, and they became alive. The two parts joined together and became alive and were able to be matured into a tree. And I was told basically, this whole healing is available when the time is right, when all these experiences have come to their fruition, the healing is no problem. So we can focus on the awareness, we can focus on deepening into love, life, connection, creativity, and know that we don't have to, play, what's that game where you're banging on the thing that keeps the ball?
Whack-a-mole.
Yes, we don't have to play whack-a-mole with problems. We can focus on deepening into the life and the goodness, and all of those problems will eventually get resolved. I mean, obviously, there's little things you do have to take care of in your life, but you don't have to be absorbed in that. Unless that's your calling, you don't have to be absorbed in that.
God bless all the people who have that calling.
Yes. Exactly.
Uh, I have two final questions for you, but before I ask them, where can people go to learn more, to get your book, to meditate with you?
Yes. So my website is experiencingthetrueself.com. And my YouTube channel is Enquiry into Self. That's Enquiry with an E. And if you message me on my website, that's probably the easiest way to get to me. But my email is lisamcarrillo@me.com. So I'm happy for people to message me as well. And so I can send the Zoom links for the meditations if they would like them.
Okay, great. And I will make sure all of that is in the description. Now
Thank you.
for
Oh,
my,
and both my books are also on Amazon too.
perfect. Okay. First one is, what is your number one health tip? So it could be anything, spirituality, diet, mindset, nutrition, anything. Just the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
Simplify.
Simplify.
Yes. Yes. And that's, just listen, if it's time to rest, rest. If it's time to move, move. If it's time to eat something nourishing, eat something nourishing. There'll be times when, okay, there's a movement to do something more complicated, and great, get that information, do what you need to do. But it's just so easy to be very complicated about things. And so, yeah, I think the more we simplify, the more we can just hear the calling of what's right for us.
Now for the last question, you get to choose a number 1 through 100, and that will tell you what the question is.
Okay, 57.
57. Any particular reason you chose that number?
Because it popped into my head.
Simple. 57. What is the most memorable trip that you've ever taken?
Huh. When I had the memory of in between lives, so I'm going to take the trip as a pretty
I thought you might.
broad. Yeah. So that friend of mine who had died, after he died, I was meditating, and I remember being before this life together, and we were just kind of hanging out, teasing, and this is all now I'm putting in earth language. I'm sure it was a little bit more expansive there, and so he was teasing, what was it like to be an atheist? And I said, oh, don't try to remember that life. That's no fun. And he said, what? You don't think I could have fun being an atheist? And he jumped into this life to prove he could have fun being an atheist. And he was born in the South to a religious family with a mom who was mentally unbalanced. So he had a very difficult life. He was missing most of his left arm. he so he ended up very depressed. And then he came out of that to atheism and happiness. He had some meditation experiences, but was able to sort of push them aside. So he was able to stay an atheist till he died. And when we were setting him up, he had colon cancer and he didn't want to wait to the very, very end. You know, once it was enough pain, he wanted to end it. So I helped him with a helium tank from the party store. So it had balloons all over in the box, pictures of balloons. And it was basically him saying, I won the bet. And we take our lives so seriously, and they're real, they're impactful. There's no reason to not be fully in each moment. But that was just such a good reminder. It's also very lighthearted. So
Mhm.
lighthearted. He just was showing me he could have fun. And it really showed me how, as an atheist, he just became very present. He didn't have any ideology to serve. And he was a very vibrant, creative. He became an artist in the last years. He was the things that he loved, he was passionate about. He gave money away to them. He's very generous. The things he didn't like, he didn't spend any time. Like he wasted no time with people he didn't like. It was really a good model of following the inner aliveness, interestingly, as an atheist.
That is wild. And I'm going to be fully transparent and overshare as I often do at some point. Um, I have a few non-negotiables when it comes to dating or a partner, and one of them is their beliefs, which, whatever they are, it just has to be something. So one of them is the person, cannot be atheist. But now, I mean, if you decide to be atheist to prove that you can have fun being an atheist, that's kind of a loophole.
Right, right. I mean, I would guess most atheists are not going to be open to spiritual topics. And he was open to some spiritual topics
Hmm.
because somehow I don't know what he did, but some he wasn't. But yeah, you just never know. There's no rule that can always be an absolute. It's amazing.
Right. We are always changing and losing pieces of our identity and then creating new ones. And yeah, nothing's permanent. Lisa, this has been so much fun. It is very easy to tap into the true self when hearing you speak, when talking to you, especially. And I really enjoyed this. And I want to thank you genuinely for coming on and sharing everything that you've experienced and all of your wisdom with everyone listening.
Oh, thank you, Jessica. And what a bright light. What a rich sharing that you have. I love your platform. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That is amazing to hear, especially from you. And if you enjoyed this conversation with Lisa Carrillo, please check out the description, check out her books, her website, everything. It's all right there. And thank you for listening.